Hello gang, welcome back to my channel, if you've already been here. If not, hello, it is wonderful to have you here. And have a seat, have a cup of tea. I can't make you tea, so you have to make it yourself, because I'm in here and you're out there. But anyway, I'd like you to have a cup of tea, and I hope you're comfortable. Please stay, and by that I mean subscribe. There's a thing going around on CosTube, so CosTube YouTube, called 21 Questions for CosTube. I might not be an official member, but I consider myself to be part of CosTube, so here we are. Also, the project I actually wanted to film this week didn't go so well. And I was just not mentally in a state to make a video about failure. It was an option, and I might actually do that at some point. And I also got my second vaccine shot, so while that is great, it took me out of commission for 3 or 4 days. The 21 questions up. My tripod just fell over. I think I need a new one at some point. It might happen again during this video. So said 21 questions, actually it's 33, but it's 2021, so we're doing 21 and you can just leave out a few. So it better fits your profile, basically. These 21 questions are kind of around as a preparation for COSY. COSY is short for Costume Symposium, a online, very accessible online convention get-together of people on YouTube who like costuming, and that doesn't only include historical costuming, that also includes cosplay and living history, and I guess also LARP. I at least hope so, because you know we wear costumes. I'll leave you all of the information for that in the description box, and while I am not participating as someone who holds a panel or makes a video, because I'm not organized like that, I will be watching, and also I consider myself part of the community, so here we are. But without much further ado, here are my 21 questions to get to know me better, either for COSY or just because you're new here. Welcome to the gang. What is your favorite genre of costuming? Well, it's mostly LARP, actually, and also historical everyday, I'd say, what I call histopunk, so what I'm wearing right now. Basically, it's just your ordinary punk stuff with some historical influences. And in my case that ranges from the Renaissance to early 20th century. What originally got you into costuming or cosplay or living history? I've always been into dressing up, and also, like most other kids, I had a history phase when I was a kid, and it wasn't dinosaurs for me. It was late Stone Age, and then it was knights and medieval times in general, which is a very broad spectrum, I know, but books for kids are mostly not that, you know, niche-y. And then also came the Roman Empire and things like that. I got into history when I was pretty young, so when I was 8 years old, 7 or 8, there was this cartoon show on German kids TV called Sissy, after Empress Elizabeth of Austria. And I distinctly remember being like 7 or 8 years old, so elementary school age, and sitting in front of the TV and saying, "That is not how it was!" So basically I was the kid who said that's not historically accurate in elementary school. I still kind of enjoyed it though. And then as a teenager I got into LARP when I was 15. And it's been a wild ride since then. And when I remember what I wanted to wear as a teenager, and also as a kid, I always wanted historical stuff. When I was young enough, my grandmother would go shopping with me or at least wood shop for me, and I ended up with kind of country living stuff, and I really loved wearing these. I was a tomboy, but I also loved my very floral prairie dresses, basically. Also all the hand-me-downs that I got. I was very happy about those because those were basically 80s cosplay. So I ended up with a lot of interesting hand-me-downs from the very early 90s or the 80s, and yeah. I guess that just did things to me. What skill would you like to learn? I would love to learn about goldsmithing decently. I can make something from metal, but I don't really have the skill. I haven't really learned the skill, and I really considered taking classes, but that would require me to be organized, which I am not. And I would really like to learn more about making shoes, because that is a field I don't really have a lot of expertise in, and working with leather in general. Less the sewing leather part, I know how that works, we have the tools for that and everything here in the flat, but also like shaping leather, making leather masks, I think I would really enjoy that. What is your biggest sewing or crafting pet peeve? The absolute ubiquity of upper class clothing versus the utter lack of middle and lower class clothing. I understand why we don't have as many sources for that, because, you know, mostly poor people just used up their clothing and passed it on until it was absolutely shredded and not in any way preservable anymore, and then it was made into rags and used otherwise. But we do have pictures, we do have a lot of photographs from the beginning of photography onwards. I really like the aesthetics of lower class clothing, and it also requires less expensive material to be more historically correct. And another thing that I really don't like, because I have a lot of opinions, is plastic taffeta. So polyester taffeta. I totally get when you can't get silk taffeta, but usually you can tell from the sheen. Oh no, actually the problem is people photographing their stuff with flash. Don't do that. Don't ever use flash! Don't! Except if you want a very punk, we are hanging out on a parking lot aesthetic. Then it's perfectly alright, but otherwise, just wait for daylight to photograph your stuff. Things from the early 2000s, like blog entries and things like that, you have a lot of flash there, and I don't like that. And also, yes, there's a third. The fact that there's very little when it comes to non-English, anglicized historical dress resources. And it's super sad. There might be stuff around in German and French and Dutch, because I just say these because these are the languages that I can actually read. But it's hard to find them. I mean, yes, English is the lingua franca of our times, but it's so sad, because you have these vastly different fashions, especially in the Renaissance. That I mean, it's one of my fields of interest, so of course that's a thing. But German Renaissance is completely different from Tudor fashion. Tudor fashion is, I don't particularly care for it, but if you happen to have good sources for that, please let me know in the comments, because I need them, and I'm apparently too stupid to find them. I'm pointing there because that's where my laptop is. Do you drape, draft, or use commercial patterns? I mostly draft and sometimes drape, and I haven't used a commercial pattern in my life, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. Are you team cut or team trace for your patterns? Well, I'm team cut. I draft anyway and then I cut, of course I do. But I think I would also be team cut with the commercial patterns because I have to make adjustments anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Sizes are weird, bodies are weird. I don't really want to launch into a whole thing about body image and beauty ideals here. So let's get to the next question. Pins or pattern weights? I do work on a carpeted floor, so pins are great for me. Pattern weights, I think it just shifts around, and the only thing I actually use weights, and by that I mean mason jars full of stuff, for is to hold my drafting paper flat. But pins work great on carpet because you can just put them in there and then that's that. And you don't even have to finagle them through the fabric and through the paper and things like that. You can just ram them into the floor and that's it. So yeah, pins. How many pieces are lurking in your UFO bin? A UFO bin. That's a good one. I'm actually sitting on it. The workbench I use for filming in front of and on top of, that's my UFO bin. Largely. Like probably half of it or something. And also you see this? This is my UFO basket. These are the ones that I plan on doing sometime soon. And I counted them this morning. I think like here we have about 30. And then there's yeah, okay, I mean let's be honest, there's at least 10 more under my butt right now. Yeah. I mean, I even keep track of my UFOs. Look here. I needed a new UFO notebook. It's empty yet because I have no idea where the other went. But yeah, I need to keep track of my UFOs so that I have one less every month than I started, just so it doesn't get out of hand. So yes, that's it. It's a question. Which era would you still like to make a costume from?
Hello, editing me here. That question was kind of hard to summarize on the spot, so I'm doing it now. Actually, what era don't I want to make a costume from? That's the problem. Lately I have been very much in love with the turning point from Italian Renaissance to Italian Baroque. So I would really like to explore that. Also German Renaissance, especially I want to make a what is colloquially known as the Cranach dress at some point, and maybe Landsknecht stuff, because Landsknecht is just such a great fashion. I mean, look at these half shorts. Isn't that amazing? It's great. That's such a fashion statement. Also, I can make a everyday mock-up basically, and then make a LARP version, because that serves as the inspiration for one of my LARP groups. And I would like to do more 19th and early 20th century working class masculine clothing for my everyday needs. Also maybe some Edwardian blouses, because those are a great staple for my everyday closet. And that doesn't even touch on the stuff I want to make that has to do with art history. Oh, there was also the idea of rural 18th century, like think the very first episodes of Outlander. So I would really like to do that, and now you know why I have so many UFOs.
And I'm currently speaking to my therapist about my feeling of not having time for anything. What costume would you like to revisit? Okay, so I would like to revisit a few of my LARP costumes, especially one from around when I was 20, 21. I made a character that I only played once or twice, and I never really finished her outfit. So she was wearing a sarafan and wide cuffed pants, and I think I could have made something cool, and now I could make something even cooler, like very Russian fairy tale like, And I also have a few drawings from my school days when I was like between 16 and 19. I drew a lot of designs back then, and just for fun, and I would really like to revisit those and make some of those now that I do have the skill and I do know what to look for, where to look for the patterns, and now that the internet is far bigger than it was over 10 years ago. The best sewing tool you ever invested in? That would be Effie, my 1930s hand-powered machine, which is actually the first sewing machine I ever had to buy. Everyone else, yeah, every other machine I had so far was a hand-me-down from relatives, because it just was easier that way. And yeah, that is my first self-bought machine, which is funny because she's the oldest of the machines I had so far. Even though she's from the 1930s, she does lend herself to making things from the 19th and early 20th century, because the mechanism hadn't evolved much by that point. What is your favorite tool to use? I'd say wax cakes, because I do like waxing my thread, and I just use wax tea lights because my mum sometimes sends me them in her care packages, and I don't complain. I love beeswax, but I rarely use them because I think they are too good to use just to keep my tea warm, and so, well, they mostly end up as wax cakes. And also embroidery needles, because I like how thick they are. They don't break, they don't bend. You can sew leather with them because they are very sharp. They are just very sturdy. Scissors or rotary blade? Scissors. I have these big ones for the aesthetics, and you rather see me use these in videos, even though they are a bit more unwieldy. And I have tiny embroidery snips and also a medium pair that I actually use for cutting most of the time, because they are quite wieldy, they're very sharp, and but they are not quite as pretty as those. Most satisfying technique? I'd go with felling, because it's just it's just a very mindless but super satisfying thing to do. Also embroidery, I just really enjoy doing embroidery. I never do that here on the channel because I always think it's kind of boring and it takes a lot of time, but I do enjoy embroidery, and I did these 18th century pockets a while ago that you can see here. And I also have a slight embroidery thread problem, because I just keep snatching it up when it is somewhere in one of my regular thrift stores. And also buttonholes, because buttonholes is basically embroidery once again. And I find them so satisfying. I know a lot of people don't like making buttonholes, or at least that is the overall impression that I have, but I really like them. They are very satisfying when they work. Sometimes I don't. Mostly I need at least one buttonhole to warm up, but after that they usually look quite nice. And I just recently did like 20 or something on one of my lab characters' coats. I'm kind of proud of them because it was a lot, and now they're done. Do you pick a project and then procure materials, or collect materials and let them speak to you? Well, I mostly hoard fabrics because I buy secondhand, and when there's stuff in the thrift store I usually just take it with me, and because it's good linen, or it's a decent wool, or a lot of lace that looks nice, or I have a ton of trim over there that I will probably never use and just give to someone else, but it was too cool and too nice to leave there. But sometimes I also have a specific project, and then I keep looking for like a teal wool specifically. You have no idea how hard it is to find a woven teal or rather sea green wool fabric that isn't boiled. Like that boiled knit stuff. Do you put your pins in parallel to the seam line you're sewing, or do you pin perpendicular? I really like the word perpendicular, but I do put them in parallel. That is the way I learned it, and it gives me more control. I sometimes try to remember to put them in perpendicular when I'm sewing straight lines, because then I can just, you know, go on and don't have to finagle them out all the time. But most of the time the instinct is to put them in parallel. Do you sew over your pins or take them out as you go? Well, given that I put them in parallel, I usually take them out because can't really sew over them anyway, and also I have a very healthy fear of breaking needles, like either the machine needle or the pin. When I have a particularly complicated project like quilts or things like that require me to sew through a lot of layers, I sometimes even wear goggles because I am too effing afraid of something breaking and just flying into my face. It has happened and I do not care for that. When I put them in perpendicular, I sometimes sew over them. But yeah, most of the time forget to do that anyway, so eh. Tea, coffee or chocolate? I gotta hydrate that beautiful bitch. Tea. I'd go with tea because it's so versatile. Also, I can't really have coffee. Chocolate is nice, but not for summer. Also, most of the time it's not really tea, it's just infusions. But yeah, I go for boiled water with some sort of leaves in it. What do you like to watch or listen to while sewing?
So usually I do watch YouTube, especially longer videos that I do not have the mental energy for watching when I'm not crafting or doing something else on the side. Sometimes I do watch stuff that I have already seen, either YouTube videos or series or movies. I used to watch Tinkerbell, the very first Tinkerbell movie, a lot as a teenager while I was sewing, because I happened to have it and it was around. That was before I knew of the joys of streaming. And I sometimes listen to podcasts. Lately, mainly the Madness Archives. I am in the final season, and Dressed, which is, if you don't know it yet, a fashion history podcast, which gives really interesting insights that I haven't had before.
Machine sewing. Barefoot, socks or shoes on the pedal. I don't know what kind of barbarian wears shoes in the house, but usually I do whatever I have on my feet in that specific moment, and that usually is barefoot in summer and socks in winter. Who has shoes in the house? Do you have any bad sewing habits? I hate ironing. I know that good ironing is half the sewing and you do yourself only favors by ironing right, and you probably do yourself a disservice by not doing it. But I hate it so much. I just really don't like ironing because I have to get out the board and the iron, and then it has to heat up and it takes up space, and then the room feels cramped and there's so much that goes into there. I even got rid of my big iron and I only have a tiny one by now that is not very heavy, so it's actually more annoying to use, but I just don't like ironing. And that is probably my worst sewing habit. And that's it. Now you know me better. Did you really want that? I don't know, but now you do. I hope you enjoyed some of these questions. There is a whole playlist, I will link that down below. And I hope you have a wonderful time, and hopefully next time we'll have a crafting video again, because I would really like to do some of these UFOs and get rid of them, and also show you nice things, because I just enjoy making things and showing you how I make things, and maybe how to make things, and if you don't know how to make... I'm rambling. Have a lovely time. Until we meet again, farewell.